Hey guys, it's Sharice. Um, so we're going to continue on our elements, shape and space today. Our question for Thursday's check-in is, what do the letters Wu-Tang stand for? W-U-T-A-N-G. I want to know what the letters stand for. You can text me your answer. So we already talked about line. We're going to talk about shape and space today, but all the visual elements, color and value and texture and space and time and motion, all that comes into play, and we'll be covering it the next few classes. And design needs to unify, balance, have rhythm, scale, proportion, etc. We'll go over that another day. Today we're going to be covering positive, negative space. Without one, you can't have the other. Foreshortening, I'm going to tell you about it. Being that we have to do this virtually, I'm asking you to read about it because I can't do my demonstrations like I do in the classroom. 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, atmospheric perspective, which denotes distance, and we'll go over that in a minute. Shape is geometric or organic, and a subset of organic is biomorphic. Actual mass means it really weighs something. For my little hints, I always say kind of like 3D versus 2D, implied mass. So we went over actual and implied line, same idea. So Donald Sullivan's Lemons. He originally painted everything yellow, then he painted it black, and then he scratched out the top layer. It was like wax with black in it to make the lemons. So we think about positive, negative space. If it didn't have the black there and it was all yellow, or if it was all black and no yellow, you wouldn't see the lemons. Positive, negative space. The empty space is the negative space. So what I use, and just hold off a second on this picture, but what I use as an example is if you're in a room, you're in a box, right? You're in some kind of enclosed room. And I use the classroom as my positive, negative space. The positive space are my students and my desk. And the negative space is the air and the space we have between each other and the necessary things to have to literally be able to move around the room. If there was no negative space, we would just all be crammed in there. So on this is a psychological test, and the Rubin vase is kind of called the face because you're supposed to see a vase in the black, and then in the white looking sideways, you're supposed to see like two profiles of faces. And it's, yeah, so I use this as positive, negative because it actually changes back and forth. Here we have the objects you're supposed to notice are actually not there or not drawn, right? They're torn out, or he left the paper blank, or I don't know what he would. He used cross hatching to make the rest. Martin Puryear's Self. This photograph doesn't allow for the experience of seeing this 6-foot mass. I mean, it's just this giant, huge thing. Barbara Hepworth, Two Figures, and I like holes in things anyway, so she puts these holes in her work, and that negative space, those holes are important to her in her work. So that negative space is just as important as what's there. Feast-making spoon. So if this spoon didn't have the negative space, it wouldn't hold anything. You couldn't put your gumbo in there, right? A spoon's got to dip down and give that ladle that curve for you to actually put liquid in it. If it was flat and had no negative space, it would be pointless. Or a knife. So we can start seeing about perspective. So this is supposed to be like you're in the air and you're above this helicopter and you can see down and you see a shadow and so on. So it's supposed to, on a flat surface, it gives you depth. Things that look closer, that are closer to us look larger, and things that are further look smaller. This is like not rocket science. It's art. So the artist can use different techniques, the size and perspective, to create the illusion of depth. Here's like 1 point perspective. Everything's going to that 1 point. This is just giving you an idea, but it would be like akin to standing in the middle of a road, let's say, and the great things are like buildings. And so for those buildings to have the right angles and look correct in space, they have to all go to that 1 point. Vanishing point, that's the dot that goes to the horizon, where it goes across. Vantage point's where you're standing. 1 is where 1 point, so we're all coming to 1 point, 2 point, 2 points. And I'm going to show you all this. Wusa. All right. So this is them trying in the early Renaissance, coming out of the Dark Ages, to make perspective. And so you can see he didn't quite know what he was doing, but he tried. Took a while to get it right. Of course, we got Da Vinci here with the Last Supper. This is 1 point perspective, and I'm going to show you the next slide that will tell you why. But if you look at the ceiling, if you look at those walls kind of with those little, I don't know, doors or rooms or whatever, and the way like the stuff in the distance has that blue haze, everything is 1 point. And if you can't remember, here's Jesus's laser beam eyes. So all the lines go to this vanishing point behind his head, in which we can't see, but that's 1 point perspective. Here's another version, the School of Athens. And I will go over this again. We'll see this again. But again, all those things had to go to make it look right in the space to that 1 point. This to me is an amazing, image of, well, I like skulls, so there's a skeleton at the bottom. But anyway, at the top, that architectural detail of that arch ceiling and it going, backwards into space. This is actually painted on a church wall. So this, we can't see the vanishing point. It's off to one side, but it is 1 point. And you got 1 point and 2 point. 2 point. So that thing in the middle is like standing on the corner and looking on each side. 2 point perspective. Oh, where is this? This is the quarters, boo. All right. Here we go with 2 point perspective. That middle image is closer in, and then those arms kind of point out to show us. This is really hard to do without pointing and showing y'all things. I'm Italian, I'm Sicilian, I talk with my hands, I'm a yacht, I can't help it. Here we have multiple points. We have streets and corners like this, right, in New Orleans because of the river. Here's different ways. This is like one way of making these Shinto shrines look like small, medium, large, whatever. This is what you would use when you're like doing layouts for architecture. Oh, well, this is brilliant. I don't know why I just put this one word on this slide, so y'all just ignore me today. But this is a guy drawing a woman laying down, which is foreshortening. And he's using the technique of the grid, which many, many artists to this day still use. And somebody actually sat there, and made a woodcut of this, which is pretty interesting because it's very time consuming. So this is what I mainly use. It's one of the first attempts of that foreshortening of where the body's laying down, and to make sure it doesn't look all crazy, like with the feet closest and all. This one's a little off, but it's a really great attempt. So I always use this. Read about foreshortening if you can. Again, I would visually demonstrate this for you guys, but I can't. So, because I'm not in the classroom. This is Man with Big Shoes, but it's foreshortening. It's just a photograph, but I think that it's just hilarious. Now, as far as perspective, photography, even though it's realistic, can give us these forms of strange juxtapositions. So here is Weird Street. If you wait a minute, kind of look, you realize he's like on a rooftop or above. And that's why the shadows look so weird. And also, you took this photograph, and everybody's like, well, what? And then once you realize, oh, it's above and it's people walking below. This is just a porch and some shadows, but the artist took it and made it like an abstraction to just make it about line and shape and form. Here, after all the stuff they did in the Renaissance to try to get perspective completely correct, then the Impressionists and on came along and undid it all. Same with like, she looks like she's in one of them chairs that lift up. I don't remember why I put this in there for this one. Atmospheric. So the blue haze creates illusion of distance and humidity. We don't have mountains here, we have levees. If you go stand on a levee and look over like the lake, you'll see like in a distance it'll be like a blue haze. Really, we got a whole nice layer of brown on there, which is pollution. So Mona Lisa in the background are these kind of blue hazy mountains in order to denote distance. So here's a painting, and then this artist was made a sculpture based off the painting, and then this whole house was actually done, and the painting was based off of this. And this is also the house we saw in the drawing for the aerial of blueprints. Actual mass is weighs something, actually heavy. Implied is usually 2D, like a painting, and it weighs only as much as the painting. So actual mass, this is like, I can't remember, it's concrete, number one. And there's people in the picture, so it's a sculpture, but it's concrete. So it actually weighs something. It's actually heavy, really heavy. This is a painting in which all these like ancient and things that we recognize, recognizable statues and sculptures and huge monuments and landmarks are all piled on each other. The Sphinx and the head of Constantine and all that. And so this is implied mass because it's a painting. So there's geometric shapes, basically circles, triangles, rectangles, squares. You learned this when you were like, 5. So y'all know what geometric shapes are. Organic or like usually made in nature. So you'll see the geometric as triangles and circles and squares and octagon. Biomorphic, that's just a blob, but organic is like a leaf, right? Or just, it can't be measured like things in geometry can. So here's geometric. It's rectangles and squares. Here's organic. This is, there's no like rhyme or reason. It's kind of flowy and all. So this is Gary's Guggenheim in Spain. Organic, biomorphic, it's a subset of it, relating to the body.